Patricia, and this is my pug Winston. Today I want to share with you the homemade chicken-based dog food recipe that I have developed for feeding my dog. I started out feeding him a commercial dog food, and he has a very sensitive stomach, and after time it didn't really work that well for him. I would like to say I highly recommend a website called dogfoodadvisor.com. On that site, they list countless brands of dog food and the nutritional facts and how they're rated, whether it's a 1-star food or a 5-star food. And it'll just give you information on whether or not you want to switch to a different brand, make your own, or stick with what you're using. The website is also super informative in that you can sign up and put your email address, and anytime there is a recall on a dog food or dog treat, you'll get an email telling you the brand, what was wrong with the food, and so forth. The Dog Food Advisor is great because even if you're making your own food, maybe the treats that you use might be recalled at some point. Last year, pig ears. I got email after email about pig ears and the bacteria and which brands not to feed, until the point where I got an email that said, don't feed pig ears at all, at least, for a certain amount of time. So again, I think that's just really helpful. That Dog Food Advisor also led me to making dog food, because last year I got an email saying that a batch of animal fat that was going to be used in the production of dog food tested positive for a euthanasia medication. The really scary part was the email said that they didn't know which companies this animal fat went to. So how do you like getting an email that says, we're not sure if your dog food is the one that's going to be tainted or not? That was really the big push for me to start making my own dog food. He had a sensitive stomach to begin with. The food that I was feeding sometimes didn't really agree with him. And then I got that email and I thought, okay, it's time. So I started off by making a chicken-based recipe because the commercially prepared dog food that I was feeding him was turkey-based. And with having a sensitive stomach, I didn't want to introduce too many different types of meat, although the different types of meat in a dog food can add extra benefits, but this is what I do. I'm going to put him down. I don't normally have him in the kitchen, but since I was making his food, I thought I'd make an exception. Organ meat is really important and gives you a lot of the nutrients that dogs need. I buy these packages that have chicken and gizzards and hearts, chicken, gizzards, and hearts mixed together. I also buy dark meat chicken and light meat chicken because the dark meat has more natural fat than the white meat, and each of them have different amounts of protein. Protein obviously is really important, and the main ingredient in your food should be meat. It shouldn't be just meat. You need to have a balanced diet for your dog. So the ingredients that I use have just been from different things that I've read, and I can get into a whole recipe later, and I'll list the ingredients below on what I use and the amounts and so forth. But today I just want to start off with showing you how I prepare the meat, because I do grind it, but I start off by freezing it because freezing the chicken makes it grind a lot easier. If it's not frozen first, it'll grind, but it'll just mush, and I just think that you get a better quality in the end if you freeze it first. I also buy chicken in large amounts because it's cheaper. I don't make dog food to save money. I used to buy a very expensive dog food. And for your financial situation, you might decide to make food, make it differently, but this is how I make it. These packages here total about 15 to 18 pounds of raw meat. I have, like I said, thighs, breasts. These are chicken livers, chicken gizzards, and hearts. You can use beef liver if you want to mix the different types of meat in your recipe. I am not a vet. I am not a licensed nutritionist. So this is all based on the research that I've done. So feel free to do your own research, talk to your dog's vet, and find out what might be best for your dog. You want the ratio of your dog food to be at least half meat, and you also want some filler ingredients because your dog needs fiber, and like I said before, your dog needs a well-balanced meal. The nutrients and minerals and so forth, just like with people, it's best if you can get it from a natural ingredient, fruits, vegetables, meat, and so forth. I do recommend that if you're going to make your own food, that you include a supplement that I just mix into his food when I feed him, because in the supplement you can get other things that are very important that you can't necessarily add to a recipe. The different bacterias, you've got your probiotics and your prebiotics, which are super helpful. I'll put a link below to the additive that I put in his food, and I haven't tried other brands, but I will say that this brand has been great. I didn't know the added bonus of using this probiotic and supplement was going to create a gas-free dog, but we no longer have to worry about his stinky butt. He had some anal gland issues here and there, and dog gas. And I know that it's from that because whenever we have missed a dose who haven't put it in his food, somebody ends up a little stinky. So I'm just making trays of smaller pieces that will fit into the grinder, and they freeze a little bit faster too if they're cut into chunks. You don't have to grind this much meat at once. Like I said, this is about 15 to 18 pounds of meat. I'm not going to use all of this meat today for one recipe. This will make 2 very large recipes, but this is the most labor intensive part, I think. So I like mixing all the different types of meat and then freezing it, grinding it, and then I freeze 1/2 of it to use next time I go to make dog food. I also find it's more cost effective to do all of this meat at once because I can buy larger packages. So, you know, this is only $1.99 a pound for this big package of chicken. Yeah, I can make a recipe using 1/2 of it, but I might pay more per pound. So again, whatever fits your budget and how you want to proceed, but this is how I do it. A lot of people will say too, you know, oh, dogs just need meat. That's really not true. And fruits and vegetables do add a lot of vitamins that they do need. Calcium is another thing that's important, and why I can't stress enough that you need a balanced meal. Keep in mind that when you're making a dog food or giving your dog a treat, do some research and make sure that whatever you're giving them isn't toxic to dogs. Just because you can eat it doesn't mean they can eat it, especially when it comes to fruits and vegetables. You know, most people know that you can't give dogs grapes. There are other seasonings and so forth that they say aren't good for dogs, like onions and garlic. You know, I love onions and garlic, and, you know, we eat a lot of it, but it's not really good for dogs. I do add a little bit of ginger to the dog food when I make it because ginger can help with bloat that dogs can get. It also can help with digestion and a dog that has sensitive stomach. And Winston has a little bit of a sensitive stomach, so I do add a little bit of that. I also, you'll see later on, add blueberries and cranberries. They have a good history of antioxidants and so forth, and are also good for dogs. But be careful what you give your dog and do some research. I wouldn't just give it to your dog because you like it. You know, they are a different, they do definitely have a different system than what we have. Again, you don't have to do all this meat, and I do have the freezer space to do it, which is helpful. The liver that I have here, I did rinse. It comes in a pretty bloody liquid, so I just rinsed it first, but I'm going to put it on the tray and freeze it with this stuff as well. A lot of people ask, why don't I feed a raw diet? And there are people that do feed raw diets. I don't particularly want to be handling raw meat every time I feed my dog. I don't want my kids handling raw meat every time they feed the dog. And I certainly don't need any extra excuses as to why they can't feed the dog. So I cook it. I figure it's got to be healthier than the commercially prepared dog food that can sit in a bin in my laundry room for a month and stay fresh, or supposedly be fresh. The main reason why I make dog food is I want the best for my dog. I mean, we all do. And whenever you can have something that's more fresh, less prepared, and less preservatives, you know you're doing a better job. Preservatives, from what the research has shown to me, is probably the worst ingredient you can feed your dog. And that's the main reason why I decided to do it like this, because freezing it is a lot healthier than the preservatives that they're putting in dogs, which are linked to cancer and a lot of big problems that, if you could avoid, it's what I want to do. I want to try and do the best for my dog. One other thing that led me to not want to do a raw diet is that Dog Food Advisor website that I was mentioning before. The majority of the recalls that I kept getting emails for were on commercially prepared raw diets. And I can't tell you how often I got those emails, but they at times were weekly. So I, again, figured if commercially prepared raw diets can be potentially dangerous with all those different bacterias and so forth, it was just one less risk factor that I wanted to have in the diet that I'm making for my dog. So I'm going to finish putting the rest of this meat on this tray, put it in the freezer. I have a pretty big freezer that freezes pretty quickly, but it'll take maybe 30 minutes or so to get firm enough to go through the grinder. And when I get to that point, I'll show you how I grind it. One thing you'll want to do is just add a little bit of oil, this is olive oil, to your pans before you put the meat on and put them in the freezer, just so that they're not stuck to the pan when you want to take the meat off to grind it. And it doesn't take much, just a little bit. I'm just going to cover these lightly while I put them in the freezer. Again, if you don't have a lot of freezer space, you can just make smaller batches and grind less meat at a time. I just do it more for time-saving purposes. And like I said before, the larger packages of meat typically cost less, so you can have some added savings there. Okay, so the meat is out of the freezer. It's still slightly frozen. It'll just go through the grinder a little bit cleaner and not mush as it goes through if it was, as it would if it was thawed. The grinder that I'm using is Antioxidants brand. I got it off Amazon, like 34 bucks. Probably about half the price as some of the higher end ones, and it does just as good a job. So I can put a link at the bottom to that if anyone's interested. I get a question asked of me, probably the biggest question is, why on earth do you go through the trouble to grind your own meat? It's really not that difficult. It's not expensive to buy the grinder, and to grind it yourself, you'll see it's pretty effortless to do this. The reason why I grind it is because I can control what I put in it. If you buy already ground beef or chicken, you're not getting any organ meat. And I've heard people say, ooh, gross, why would you feed your dog hearts? Hearts and livers are super high in nutrients. One in particular is the amino acid of taurine that is found in muscle meat, and it's found the most in liver and hearts. There's a brand of grain-free diet, which happens to be the one I fed my dog, that has been recalled because even though it was a high-end food, I paid a lot of money for it, it didn't contain enough taurine. So I do want to make sure that you understand how important it is to have a balanced diet, and that just grinding or buying pre-ground meat really isn't enough. In addition to having the hearts and livers that are high in the taurine, gizzards are a great addition to the dog's diet in that gizzards are high in protein. They contain iron and minerals, high in vitamin C, E, B, but also they contain glucosamine, which can help with cartilage and arthritis. So, I actually, when I buy the hearts in my grocery store, they sell a package that contains hearts and gizzards together. So what a great mix. I just add it to their diet. So if you're thinking about making your own homemade dog food and you think you don't want to go through the trouble of buying grounding the meat yourself, and you want to just buy ground meat, keep in mind you're not going to be getting the organ meat included in that ground meat from the store that is really so essential. So I'm going to turn my grinder on and show you just how easy it is to grind up this meat, and we'll go from there. The small pieces make it easier to go in, and then you have your little pusher because you don't want to put your fingers down in there, and push it through. Okay, so here we have all of the ground meat on this tray. This is about 18 pounds of meat. It was those 5 trays of cut up meat that I froze. Start to finish, it took me 20 minutes max. So it's really not that daunting a task. I know some people are just, so overwhelmed by the thought of grinding their own meat. It's really not a big deal. So I have the organ meat and all of the other meats together. The organ meat, you want a fair amount, but you do want the majority of the meat to be your white meat and dark meat. I do want a large portion of the hearts to be in here because of the taurine that I mentioned, but also when you cook taurine, you cook meat, it lessens the taurine from anywhere from half to 2/3. So you really want to make sure that you get those hearts in here so that when you're doing that cooked diet, you're still left with taurine in your dog food. So 20 minutes tops to grind all this meat. I'm not even going to use all of this meat in the recipe. This is only, I'm only going to be using half of this. The other half I'm going to put in this container and put in the freezer. So next time I make dog food, I already have the meat already ground. So I'm really only grinding the meat every other time I make dog food. And this will be good for months. So what I'm going to do before I just take it and stick it in this container, I'm going to take it all off of this tray and I'm going to put it in this large container so I can get it all mixed well to have the hearts and livers and gizzards, white meat, dark meat, all incorporated together so that there's an even distribution of each when I divide it, put it in the freezer, and then use the other half. While I'm mixing this, I did want to mention one of the benefits to also freezing the meat or getting it partially frozen when you grind it is it keeps the meat cold. If you're doing thawed meat, as it goes through that grinding process, it's going to get warm. So now that I have it in this big container and I'm mixing it, this ground meat is ice cold, actually like really cold on my hands. And you want to keep your meat as cold and fresh as possible through the process so that you don't add any bacteria and so forth. So so I have my 17 pounds of ground meat divided into 2 containers. I actually ended up weighing it, so I do have 8.5 pounds in each container. You don't have to be that exact, but for you guys, I just went ahead and did that so we'd know exactly how much meat we were dealing with. I've also put it in these clear containers so you can see when I add ingredients a little bit better than a solid colored container. This container here, I'm gonna cover and put in the freezer for the next time I make dog food. I already have the ground meat already prepared and ready to go. So I'm just going to cover this. I like to use a piece of plastic wrap on top to get out any airspace, just to keep it as fresh as possible. I don't want any ice forming on it. It's not going to be in the freezer, that long, but that batch of dog food will last me several weeks. So I'll pop this in the freezer for the next time I make dog food. And today we'll work with the 8.5 pounds that I have that's already ground. Also, once you get your grinder and you grind up this, you will be surprised how easy it is, and you'll be grinding meat for other home uses. We like to grind chicken breast. You can really eliminate a lot of the chicken fat that you get when you buy ground chicken breast at the store. Plus, you can buy chicken breasts for $1.99 and the pre-ground, what is that, $5, $6, $7 a pound sometimes. So you can actually make ground chicken or ground turkey for turkey burgers, things like that. Back to dog food. So we have this. I'm gonna put that in the freezer and get all the other ingredients together and we'll go from there. I've gone ahead and laid out the rest of the ingredients that I use in my cooked chicken-based homemade dog food recipe that I want to share with you and tell you a little bit about why I use each of these ingredients and how much. I have my recipe here. So first I want to start off with, I have 64 ounces of chicken broth. I use the chicken broth to cook the brown rice that I put in the recipe, and I also use it to cook the quinoa that I use in the recipe. The brown rice is high in protein, and it's a great form of fiber for your dog, help keep your dog regular, and help add to that balanced nutrition. Brown rice can be a little bit more difficult for your dog to digest than, say, white rice, but because it's so high in fiber and the protein, and it's such a great form of rice, I would recommend using it over the white rice in your dog food. One thing that you can do, and what I will do, is after I cook it, I will grind it to make it easier to digest. And being that it will be mixed with sweet potatoes and other ingredients, it's not a main ingredient. I don't have a food processor. If you do, grinding the cooked brown rice would be a lot easier. I'm gonna have to do it in small batches because all I have is this little mini chop, which it works. I just have to grind smaller amounts at one time. The mini chop is what I have used to grind up other ingredients here that I have listed. Quinoa is another great ingredient that is essential for amino acids, and it's low in calories, low in fat, and contains a great deal of iron and calcium. Quinoa, if you've never cooked it before, follow the package instructions, but you want to rinse quinoa in a strainer under water until the water runs clear. You want to make sure that your strainer has small enough holes that the quinoa, because it is so small, doesn't go through, obviously, when you rinse that. And I will rinse it and cook it in the chicken broth, and then we can have everything all together just to save time. One of the biggest ingredients that I use that is a great ingredient, and that is sweet potatoes. I have 5 large sweet potatoes that I will use in this recipe. I will wash these, cut an X in them, and put them in the microwave. I would cook them for about 10 minutes and then rearrange them, squeeze them and see if they're soft, cooked all the way through, and probably cook them for an additional 5 minutes in 5-minute intervals until I feel like they're all completely cooked. And then I will mash these to add to the other ingredient. The sweet potatoes, they're really great for your dog's digestive tract and help keep him regular because they have such a high amount of dietary fiber. They're also low in fat and contain essential vitamins B6, C, and vitamin A. So these are a great thing to have. You really want to stay away from corn, soy, a lot of your heavier oats. I was really disappointed when I read my bag of dog food that I was feeding my dog, because the front of the bag said, turkey and brown rice recipe in big bold print, making me feel like that's the main ingredients. And then it wasn't until I flipped it over and started reading the ingredient list that the brown rice was like the 7th ingredient. And before those were heavier oats and white rice and things that really weren't as nutrient rich. So I can't stress enough about it. Even if you're not going to make your own dog food, make sure you know what is in your dog food that you're feeding and understand what those labels say and how they're listed, because commercial food industry is all about making money and trying to make the best profit. And if they can put something on the front of the bag to make you feel like, oh, it's the #1 ingredient, then you might look at that and not think to really read the list of ingredients. I know I mentioned before about dogfoodadvisor.com. That is an excellent place to start. It really helped me understand how to read an ingredient label and decipher what the meaning of some of the things on that list are. I didn't even know what meat byproduct meant, and it goes into pretty gross detail as to what meat byproduct really is. And you might not even realize that you're feeding your dog basically every part of an animal that's not a hoof, a horn, or a beak. So again, do a little bit of research and understand the ingredient list on your food so that you can make the best choice for your dog and for your budget. You might just decide to switch to a different brand. I was feeding, and I've always fed, the 4 out of 5 star dog foods, 5-star dog foods. And even though they're high ranked dog foods, doesn't necessarily mean that they have the best ingredients, which is another thing that, all of that led me to making my own and knowing what I'm putting in my dog's food. Knowing that when I'm putting 8 pounds of meat in my dog's diet, they're actually getting 8 pounds of meat. They can say there will be, I know there's a dog food commercial out there that says, the chicken is our #1 ingredient, which when you flip the bag over and you look at the list of ingredients, chicken is the #1 thing listed. But dogfoodadvisor.com explained to me that that's very misleading, that it's by weight and by volume. So yes, this chicken breast, is listed first, but chicken and meat contain a lot of water and it makes it very heavy. when you take that chicken breast and you cook it down to the point where they're going to be making kibble, dried kibble with it, and you take all that moisture out, really that chicken comes down to a much, much smaller amount. So they're not lying when they say that chicken is the #1 ingredient. But the real truth is, if it says chicken and not chicken meal, if it says chicken, that's chicken before it's been cooked. That's the meat while it's still full of that water and juice and so forth. So if the next ingredient after chicken is potatoes or rice or whatever it is, your #1 ingredient after it's cooked really is no longer that chicken. So I'm just trying to tell everybody, do what's best for you and for your pet, but don't let the wool get pulled over your eyes. I didn't know, I didn't understand until I just did a little bit more research. Just be informed. So if you're paying $35 for a bag of dog food, you have the right to know really what you're getting. So do the research, hook up with that website, and it will really give you the information and the power to just know what you're spending your money on. But anyway, back to my recipe that I've created for my dog that I like. After the sweet potatoes, the next ingredient I have is blueberries. Blueberries, I have 2 cups of blueberries here. It's a great low-calorie treat. They also contain antioxidants, fiber, vitamin C, and vitamin K. They're a great snack. Winston loves fresh blueberries. If I'm eating blueberries, he's always begging. And they're a great little treat. They're much healthier than dog bones, much lower in fat than any other kind of dog treat. And they're, he really likes them. The other thing I have here is cranberries. Cranberries, they're tart. Your dog isn't going to like a cranberry like they're going to like a blueberry, but they are high in antioxidants. They're a great source of fiber. They're loaded with a natural source of vitamin C. So for the cranberries, I have 3/4 of a cup. I've, much less than the blueberries. I can only find cranberries frozen this time of year where I live. I could get them fresh at Christmas time, but I used frozen ones here. I put them in my mini chop. It was really loud because they were frozen, but they chopped up just fine. They're really pretty, actually. And, you don't want cranberries to be a main part of your diet, but keep in mind that this 3/4 of a cup of cranberries is going to be mixed with 8 pounds of meat and all this other ingredients. So you want to try and make your dog's diet well balanced. And then, just to be on the safe side, we'll add a food supplement to make sure that your dog is getting that complete balanced nutrition, the omega-3 fatty acids, the probiotics and prebiotics that are so important for your dog's digestion. The reason why I don't have the food supplement that I put in my dog food here with these other ingredients is because it's very important, if you buy a food supplement, to add it as a supplement right before you feed your dog. These supplements, especially those that contain the prebiotics and probiotics, they need to be kept refrigerated. You don't ever want to heat them or cook them. And you want to add them right before you feed it to your dog. So I keep it in the refrigerator, and I will show you the brand that I use and that I recommend, that I really like. But that's why it's not part of my recipe, and it's not something I add when I add all the other ingredients. I also have here flaxseed. I have 1/4 cup of whole flaxseed, and then I have 1/4 cup of ground flaxseed. Flaxseed is a great source of fiber and also your omega-3 fatty acids, which are really essential in healthy skin and coat. So I like to incorporate some of that in my recipe as well. I also have here pumpkin seeds, and I ground them. I have 1/2 cup, and I ground them in my mini chop as well. And I like to buy the pumpkin seeds that have no salt. And they just come in a little container. I get them at the grocery store. You could probably buy them bulk, depending on where you live. And they're just, a little green seed, and, they're tasty. I'll actually eat the rest of these as a snack. So, I try not to feed my dog anything that I wouldn't eat. Now, granted, I'm not going to have a dinner of chicken livers or chicken hearts, but it's fresh. I would never feed my dog anything that's not fresh and something that you would want to eat yourself, freshness-wise. After the pumpkin seeds, I also have fresh ginger. This was about a 1 to 2 inch piece of fresh ginger. I just peeled it and stuck it in my mini chop and ground it up. And then if you measured this out, it would weigh about a half an ounce, maybe just a little bit over half an ounce. And ginger is phenomenal. This is really great for nausea, digestion issues, any kind of anti-inflammatory issues. And my dog has a little bit of a sensitive stomach. So I really like incorporating the ginger into his diet. And I don't know if I mentioned before, but one of the things that got me into making homemade dog food is because even though I was buying a top-rated commercial dog food, there came a time when he was just out of the blue getting sick, and in the middle of the night he was throwing up. I did some research, and apparently that's kind of common for some dogs to just not be able to tolerate certain dog foods and have, I guess in people, what would be similar to almost like reflux. And I could medicate him for it, but I really don't want to give my dog a medicine if I don't have to. So I decided to make homemade dog food because the preservatives in prepared commercial food is really a lot of what causes problems for dogs, whether it's cancer or digestive issues. I mean, just like preservatives in people, you want to eat as much fresh and, wonderful fruits and vegetables and produce, and stay away from those things that can sit on a shelf for months. So even though I cook this, and yes, cooking might take out some of the nutrients and some of the things that I'm including, the way I look at it as it's got to be better than the bag of dry kibble that sits in my laundry room for a month and doesn't go bad. So I like to keep everything as fresh as possible. As soon as I cook it and get it cooled down, I freeze when I'm not going to be using immediately, and I defrost portions as needed. So back to my recipe. After the ginger, I do have apple. I put it in a bag here just so it wouldn't turn brown too quickly. It's just, any kind of apple you want to use, just a regular apple. I did peel it, core it. You want to make sure you don't use the seeds. I just chop it up. It's a great source of fiber as well, and also a good source of vitamin A and vitamin C. This looks like a lot of carrot. I just chopped up one large carrot. It was about the same size, but it gave me quite a bit there. Carrot, Winston doesn't care too much for carrots as a treat. I know some dogs love little mini carrots, and that's great. If I give Winston one, I usually find it in a million little pieces all over the floor. But they are healthy. They're great. They're a great form of fiber, beta carotene, which also provides a great amount of vitamin A. So I do have a chopped up carrot there to add. Another thing I found kind of surprising in my research was celery and the health benefits that come from celery. This is about a cup and a half, maybe a little less than a cup and a half of celery. Celery has a great amount of vitamin A, B, and C. It also is great for promoting excellent hearty health care, and it has actually been proven in dogs to even help fight cancer. So why not? So I put some celery in my recipe. The other thing I want to include is, because I'm using 8 pounds of meat, I want to use 1 egg for every 2 pounds of meat. So I'm using 8 pounds of meat, I've got 4 eggs. The eggs are a great source of fat and protein, but also what I'm using is the whole egg, including the shell. Calcium is also really important for your dog. And that's another reason why I add the food additive that I was talking about before that I keep in my refrigerator, to make sure that he's getting all of the nutrients, but especially including calcium. 1 eggshell has about 2.2, just over 2 grams of calcium, approximately per egg. So this will give me between 8 and 10 grams of calcium in this whole batch. Your dog is gonna need these nutrients for growth and his health. And if he's deficient in something, say calcium, if your dog's deficient in calcium, he'll end up having weak bones. Not tomorrow, not next month, but later on down the road, you might find that you're having health concerns because, for years he didn't get enough of this or he didn't get enough of that. So I can't stress enough about having as many fresh vitamins coming from fruits and vegetables, fresh eggs, fresh meat, grains, and so forth, but also to check with your vet to see if they recommend a certain supplement for your dog. And like I mentioned before, I'll show you the one that I use. So I'm gonna go ahead and rinse this quinoa in my colander and get that ready to cook in the chicken broth. And then I'm gonna go ahead and cook the brown rice in the chicken broth. And then I'm gonna grind the cooked brown rice in my mini chop, so that's a little bit easier to digest as well. So let me get these sweet potatoes cooked, the rice and the quinoa cooked, and then we'll come back and put it all together and go from there, okay? All of my ingredients are cooked, chopped, and ready to be mixed together to then be incorporated with our meat mixture. My sweet potatoes are cooked, and then I split them in half just to let them cool so they'd be easy enough to handle and scoop out. The quinoa cooked for about 15 minutes. The last couple of minutes, maybe the last 2 or 3 minutes, I went ahead and put my chopped celery in with the quinoa just to soften up some, because the celery is kind of hard. So I just wanted to put that in with this. Like I said, just the last 2 minutes or so to soften it up some. When I cooked the brown rice, that cooks a lot longer. The brown rice took about 45 minutes to cook. And in the brown rice, I put my half an ounce of grated fresh ginger in with the rice, and that really smells good. So the ginger with the rice was a good combination. And then after that was finished cooking, I went ahead and put it in my mini chop and ground up the brown rice so it's a little bit easier to digest. It actually kind of looks more like oatmeal now. In my blender, I have the 4 eggs with the eggshells that I blended, and you'll see when I pour it out that the eggshells are completely crushed up and not going to be a choking hazard. So I'll just put everything here in this container and we'll get it all mixed up. This is the quinoa, kind of stuck in the pot. I'll get this out. Still warm. And then to that I will add, oh, here's special. I will add the egg, and this spoon is heavy on one end. And I want to make sure I get all the eggshell out of the bottom, because like I mentioned before, you definitely want to make sure you have that added calcium from the eggshell into your mixture. I'm actually going to take this bottom off to make sure that I get all the eggshell out, because it's kind of sitting in the bottom. Like I said, it's all in the bottom. But you can also see it's kind of like sand. There's not any sharp edges to it. You don't have to worry about your dog choking on eggshell, that's for sure, because it's so finely ground. All right, looks like we got all of that out. Just let this in the sink. And I'll just give this a good little mix and then add all the other ingredients. Here's your rice. The ginger in this rice smells so good. I like to mix all of these ingredients together really well before trying to mix it in with the meat. I just think it would just be too much ingredients all at once to try and get everything equally distributed through the mixture. So I do the same thing when I make meatballs or meatloaf for my family. I always mix my breadcrumbs and all of that mixture together before I add it to the meat last. And then the sweet potatoes, like I said, they're finally cool enough to handle. And I just peel the skins off and add them. I'll tell you what, Winston is so excited when it's time for him to have dinner or breakfast. It's nothing like the excitement he had over regular dry dog food out of a bag. Now he is a pug, so I will say he's never been disappointed with a meal, but it was super cute to see how excited he got once I started making his homemade food. I love the color of these cranberries. You don't ever want to use or give your dog cranberry sauce, like canned cranberry, because there's so much sugar, and sugar's really not good for dogs, and you just want to be careful when you're feeding an ingredient that you don't have other ingredients kind of in there disguised. And then pumpkin seeds, and then the carrot, and here's the chopped up apple, and lastly the blueberries. And I'll just give it a good stir and get all of these ingredients mixed together. So everything's been combined. I ended up just putting my hand in to mix it all. It's really the easiest way. And that way, if you find large chunks of sweet potato, it's just easy to mash them up and get everything all combined together before you add it to your meat mixture. So as you can see, everything's pretty evenly distributed throughout. You're not going to get a hunk of ginger in one bite type of a thing. And we will mix it and put it in the oven. It really does smell good. I'm ready to mix together my fruit and vegetable mixture with my meat mixture and then get it all together and put in the oven. And I was planning on doing all of this yesterday in one fell swoop, and with my busy life and how it goes, it didn't happen. So now I'm into the next day, and I thought, well, I could try to make it look like it's all one video, but then I was thinking about all the people that say to me all the time, I can't believe you make dog food. How do you have time to make dog food? I barely have time to make food for myself. I don't always have time. But that's the whole idea. You just find the time, and it doesn't all have to be done in one big step. You can grind the meat and put it in the refrigerator and then do the vegetable mixture the next day and bake them, or however, as long as you're keeping your ingredients fresh and you're getting it done in the weekend, it doesn't matter if it's all done at one big step or done in a couple of stages. And the next time I go to make dog food, I'll already have the ground meat already ground in the freezer. So next month when I make it, that step's already done. Do it when you have time. This is all really cold. I'm gonna put a glove on because mixing all of this, my hand's gonna be in here for a while. And yeah, I could use a wooden spoon, but you're just not gonna get it all mixed the way it needs to get mixed. Trying to use a spatula or something. You're gonna need to find a really big container, maybe not quite this big, but something that you're not struggling to get it all mixed well and get it the way it needs to be. I need 5 hands to get everything evenly mixed together so that you don't have more meat in some patties and less in others. Wow, this stuff is really heavy. And remember, you don't want anything sitting out for any period of time. You know, food safety, it's just like people food. You got to keep stuff cold and work within a timely fashion so that everything stays fresh. I like to make patties or meatballs and bake them so that they're already the serving size that I need. Plus, if I take the dog to the kennel, it's a lot easier to just give her a bag of frozen meatballs for her to put in her refrigerator. In fact, last time we went away, I gave her a bag of frozen meatballs, and then I gave her a bag that had maybe 3 days of thawed meatballs, and then she just thawed the others as she needed them. Depending on the size of your dog, or if you're just starting out and you don't know what the serving size would be for your dog, another less time-consuming way to do it is if you portion this out onto cookie sheets, maybe making several large meatloafs. They'll bake longer. My meatballs bake for about 25 to 30 minutes. But if you make several meatloafs on your baking trays, bake it for probably an hour, And then once they're cooled, you can crumble them up into containers and then freeze the containers of crumbled meat mixture. And then when it comes time to feed your dog, you can just thaw the container one at a time that you need, and then get your measuring cup and measure out from the container of crumbles how much you want for each serving. You know, you might have multiple dogs and so forth, and some might require larger servings than others. Those of you that have your Great Dane and your Chihuahua. So let me let you see this all mixed together. So this is just about all mixed up, but like I said, I like using my hand because then you're gonna find spots that aren't really mixed together very well, or like a big piece of sweet potato and you can just mix it or mash it up and get it all in there. I do like to grease my cookie sheets with just a little bit of olive oil so that they don't stick, because this meat mixture really isn't very fatty, although there will be some liquid that will come off of it when you're baking it. I think that looks pretty good, actually. Working with the 8 pounds of meat and then the added veggie mixture, this is probably going to give me about 50 meatballs or so, and I feed 2 a day, so it'll maybe even a little bit more than that, and it'll last me close to a month. That's just olive oil in a little sprayer. I don't put much, just a little bit on here to keep them from sticking. I'll use a 1/2 cup measurer, and the meatballs are just a little bit like that. He's 25 pounds and he'll eat 2 of these a day. So depending on how big your dog is, activity level, breed, all of that. Being that he's a pug, he's pretty low key. So he does go outside and, you know, run around and everything, but he's a little bit of a couch potato, so we don't have to worry too much about him burning off everything that he eats. But pugs do tend to pick up weight. And I will say that he was actually heavier when he was eating commercially prepared dry dog food. I had him on a weight maintenance food, a high quality food, but it was a weight maintenance. And he was actually a little heavier than he is now, and he was eating less food. I like that he gets to eat a little bit more, and it's healthy, and he doesn't seem as hungry all the time. He was literally getting 1/3 of a cup of dry kibble twice a day. And yeah, he's a pug, so he's always probably gonna act like he's hungry, but it didn't really seem like very much food. This way I kind of feel like, and this will cook down a little bit, it just seems like a nicer portion for him. The other thing too is he, not you want to talk about this when you're making food, but he used to poop a lot more. He'd have 2 servings of that dry kibble and he would poop 3 times a day, pretty much like clockwork. And now he only goes twice a day. So it's interesting. He's eating better quality food. He's actually eating a little bit more volume and he's going less. So that's a win if you have to clean your yard, that you're not having to pick up as much poo. And it's going to be better for him too. He's actually, you know, burning off the food that he's eating. It's healthier. His coat looks fantastic. And he's not as heavy as he was. Another thing that I think about when I have friends and I had a dog that had skin issues, I really do wonder sometimes if the skin issues aren't from the preservatives in the food. I see on the market all these commercially prepared foods that are limited ingredient, bison, lamb. I used to feed a lamb and rice because I had a boxer that I thought was getting, you know, a red belly and acne and all that. I thought it was because of the food, but I actually think it was the preservative. So I wonder sometimes, you know, people say, how do you have time to make dog food? How do you have time to take care of a dog that has all these skin allergies and the medicated baths and the trips to the vet and the shots of cortisone and all that stuff? I do have to think, instead of buying that lamb and rice for my boxer because he had this sensitive skin, I wonder if I hadn't been feeding him a commercially brand food that was full of preservatives that were so bad for him. Actually, I'm getting a little heavy-handed on these scoops. If that wouldn't have solved his problem. I'll never know, but I do know that Winston had stomach issues and was throwing up during the night, and I started giving him medicine for his a Pepsid, which did seem to make the tummy issues better. But then after a couple of weeks of doing that, I was thinking, I hate medicating my dog. If there's a way I can naturally fix this stomach issue. Started making food. He hasn't thrown up since. And I've been doing this for a while now. So, maybe you want to give it a try. Sometimes I don't think it's you never know. Maybe the allergy isn't, what I'm trying to say is maybe the allergy isn't, oh, my dog can't eat turkey, I have to go to lamb. Or my dog can't eat lamb, I have to eat bison. Maybe it's not any of that. Maybe it's the fact that it's commercially produced food full of nitrates and preservatives and all the stuff that's not good for them. Worth the thought, worth maybe trying something different. Again, when people say to me, how do you have the time? I don't do this every day. People say, I barely have time to cook for myself. Well, you have to cook for yourself 3 times a day. I do this once a month. I do it once a month and put it in the freezer, and I'm good to go. And as you can see by this batch, it didn't all get done the same day. Again, not the end of the world. When I make lasagna, I don't make it all the same day. I make my pasta sauce and meatballs one day, and then assemble lasagna the next day. See, you just work it into your life. I had a million things going on yesterday. Kids, errands, life. We all have crazy busy schedules. If you want to make it work, I guess you figure it out. I thought when I first started doing this, I'll just give it a try, see if it works. And then honestly, he is so excited about this food that I don't think I could go back to commercial dog food. I think he'd look at me and say, I don't think so. He gets so excited when it's time to eat. It would break my heart to go back to feed him the stuff that he used to eat, but I used to pay $40 a bag for. This batch of meat, and then I put half of it in the freezer, it was $50 or about $49. When you're buying meat, chicken breasts, $1.99 a pound, that's really not that much. And the chicken thighs, they were $1.69 a pound. And then your livers and gizzards and things weren't super expensive. So all of it came to about, like I said, $48, $49, $50. Put half of it in the freezer. So this is $25 worth of meat. And sweet potatoes and rice and quinoa. Flaxseed, that's a little bit expensive. But I bought these big bags of organic flaxseed, and it's taken me through, I still have some, probably at least 3 big batches of food. So, I wasn't doing it to save money so much as I was doing it for the health benefits. So I never really did break it down to see penny for penny which was the better value. I can't say it's going to be a whole lot more, especially since I was buying high-end food. Now, if you're buying less expensive food, then yeah, this would be more expensive. But also, you get what you pay for. He certainly, when I was buying $40 bags of dog food, he wasn't getting this much meat. That's for sure. So let me wash my hands, and then we will get this in the oven. Once your oven is preheated to 350 degrees, we're going to bake these for about 30 minutes. Well, somebody knows dinner's in the oven. Is that your food we're cooking? Tell everybody. Say don't buy commercial food. Make it. It's so much yummier. I'm sorry, buddy. We have to wait 30 minutes. I know. That's a long time, isn't it? So it's been just about 30 minutes, and they smell wonderful. And they look like they are pretty close to being done. This one's on the bottom, might need another minute. Tell you what, they smell really good. What do you think, Winston? Do they smell really good? smell like they're done, I like to check with an instant read thermometer just to make sure the centers are done. So between 160, 165. And yep, 170, 172. These are yep. Even these thick ones are coming in at 170. So they're cooked. They're cooked. They are cooked. They smell fabulous. And needless to say, I have somebody's complete and undivided attention. Do they smell good? You already had dinner tonight. I know, these are for tomorrow morning. I have a little broken piece. I'm not sure what to do with it. What do I do with this little broken piece? It's just the best thing ever. As you can see, I have these on separate trays with freezer paper. Once they're completely cooled, I like to just set them on a tray. You can put them really tight, close together, on freezer paper, and I like to stick them in the freezer just maybe for a half an hour, 45 minutes until they're frozen, and then I can put them in either a large Tupperware or freezer Ziploc bags, but that way they won't stick together and you have individual servings. As you can see, I mean, this pan just came out of the oven. There's hardly any grease. I mean, this isn't real greasy. It's not like fatty ground beef. It's pretty lean. They're juicy. The other reason why I put them on the freezer paper is because they are so juicy that if you don't put them on freezer paper and you pop them in the freezer, they're going to stick to the pan. So, live and learn. I learned the hard way. So put them on freezer paper, and then that way they just come off real easily. And again, you don't have to do single servings. I mean, if this is a step you want to avoid altogether, then like I said, just bake yourself maybe 3 good-sized meatloafs on each pan. Bake them for about an hour or so till the center's completely cooked. I'd say 165 Fahrenheit in the middle. They're cooked. Let them cool, and then you could crumble those larger meatloafs into containers and then freeze it that way, and then just do it per scoop. One other thing I wanted to mention was, don't try and make one huge meatloaf the size of the pan. It'll be in the oven forever. So I would make several, smaller size if you didn't want to do the single serving amounts. Check out the hunks of apple and blueberry and stuff that you can still see as wholesome ingredients that you can actually see that aren't food coloring and processed garbage. And if you actually like chicken livers and some of these ingredients, you probably want to eat these yourself. I have just taken these out of the freezer. So now if I want to put them in a Rubbermaid Tupperware type container for your freezer or a zippered freezer bag, they won't stick together. So it's just a lot easier down the road when you want to just defrost as many as you want to use. Just use whatever, like I said, fits your freezer space the best. I like to use freezer bags, and then actually when it's empty, I just tuck it in the door inside the freezer. That way I don't waste them and I keep reusing them. As long as they don't have holes in them, you're still good to go. This made, I think, 28 servings. So I feed them twice a day. And I end up making it about once a month. I had mentioned about using the freezer paper so that they don't stick. These got a little close together, so they're sticking together. But you can snap them apart. I try to not thaw more than maybe 2 or 3 days worth of servings. Just keep it as fresh as possible. You can just keep them in your refrigerator to thaw them. So like if I feed tonight and I say, I'm down to 1 last ball in the morning or I'm out, just go get a couple, put them in another bag, put them in your refrigerator, and by morning they'll be thawed. Again, you don't have to do it this way. You can just break all of the cooked crumbles up into a container and then measure out by scoops. And just make sure you can get it sealed and get the air out good and tight. So that's what I will do with the rest of these in these bags. I wanted to talk to you briefly about a food additive, a supplement for the diet that you're making. This is wonderful. You've got fruits and vegetables and vitamins and minerals, but you want to make sure that your dog has a really well-balanced meal. And just to ensure that, it's always a good idea if you're making homemade food to buy a good food supplement. This is a brand that I found that I like. You don't have to use this brand. There are lots of ones out there. I get this from Chewy. I'm sure you could buy it from other sites. I don't even know if Amazon might sell it, but I found the best price was from Chewy. This comes in multiple different sizes. So if you're not sure whether or not your dog will like it or you'll be happy with it, this comes in as small as a 4-ounce container. This is a 2-pound container. The 2-pound container was $45. I went ahead and got the bigger container because then you get the free shipping and all that. But to start out, you might want to get the 4-ounce container, which is $15.99. That's on Chewy. It also depends on how much your dog weighs as to how much you will use. Winston's 25 pounds, so he gets 1 tablespoon a day. So I put a half a tablespoon in his morning meal, half a tablespoon in his evening meal, and I just mix it up. You want to be careful with this stuff that you always keep it refrigerated and you don't heat it. So when I make his food, I will take the ball out of the refrigerator, put it in a bowl, put it in the microwave because he's spoiled. I don't go to him cold out of the refrigerator. And I'll microwave it for like 20, 22 seconds. Stir it up. Depending on how hot your microwave is, you might want to play around with it. You really don't want it hot. Make sure it's not too hot. But you also don't want it hot because then when you add the prebiotics, you don't want it to kill the bacteria that you're paying for. So I get it kind of room temperature. A little bit over room temperature is fine. Again, you don't want it hot. You don't want to burn your dog, and you don't want to kill the bacteria that's in this. This stuff is, it's called Holistic Pet Organics Canine Complete, and I can put a link at the bottom for you if you're interested in it. It has, it's an all-in-one whole food supplement. That means it's got vitamins, minerals, prebiotics, probiotics, enzymes, essential fatty acids, and antioxidants. Again, you want to add something if you're making your own just to make sure your poor little puppy is all covered. The other big benefit from this that I didn't realize until after I started using it, it made Winston gas-free. So for that reason alone, even if you buy store-bought food and you have a gassy pup, this stuff, yeah, gas no more. He also seemed to have, we just called it stinky butt. I guess it was his anal glands. Every once in a while, he'd jump in your lap and you're like, okay, don't let that end. Again, no longer have that problem. He doesn't have any kind of odory smell from gas or anal glands or any of that. So this is a great supplement if you have any of those issues, regardless of whether or not you're feeding your dog homemade food or not. But that's what I have to say about this stuff. Like I said, there's a lot of different ones out there. I've read reviews. You take a chance and see. The one thing I do want to mention is it's kind of a powder, not powder, but granule type stuff. Looks kind of like ground kelp because that's the main ingredient. So if you are feeding a dry food and you put this on your dry food, I don't know how well it would stick. It might all go to the bottom of the bowl. Depending on how much your dog likes it, he may not consume it all. So that's something to think about if you do feed dry food and you're adding this. You might want to either put a little water on the food and dampen it so this will stick to it, or maybe you could find a supplement that's a liquid if that's an issue. Again, another reason why you might want to start with the smallest size available to see if it works with the food that you're feeding and to see if your dog likes it before you jump into buying the $45 2-pound container. But I really like it as far as the benefits that I've seen very quickly. So noticeable that if somebody, my husband, kids, whatever, feed Winston and they forget to put this in his food, you'll know the next day. I mean, it's like, oh, wow, the dog has gas. Somebody forgot to give him the food supplement. That's all I have to say so far. I think we've pretty much wrapped everything up. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. I'll try to answer all of them. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to more videos to show you and hope that you'll give us a thumbs up and subscribe. Thanks.